Story number 1 is from a guy who looked like he was born to be in the woods. Former military, quiet, strong, one of those men who barely raises his voice even when he is talking about almost dying. He guides in Alaska now, taking people into places where there are more grizzlies than people, and the mountains do not care if you come home. He was telling me about this one fall trip where everything lined up to show him exactly how small he really was out there. He had a client from the city, older dude, a little out of shape but tough in that stubborn way. They were hunting moose out of a spike camp deep in a valley that felt like the spine of the world. Spruce trees, muskeg, cold fog hanging low in the morning, ravens talking trash from the tree line. They had a routine: wake up in the dark, coffee, oatmeal, check the wind, and then walk out from camp to glass the river bars for moose. The whole time they called out, "Hey bear," every couple of minutes, because in that country, everything smells like food to a grizzly at the end of the season. On the third day, they follow this little side creek that runs into the main river. The creek is shallow, maybe ankle deep, and it makes a nice quiet path through the willows. He is in front, carrying a big rifle, eyes scanning for antlers in the gray light. The client is a few steps behind, huffing a little, but trying to keep up. The guide notices fresh sign. Mud turned up on the banks, big tracks where something heavy stepped. He kneels, looks at one of the prints, and his stomach tightens. Big claws, big pad, no question. It is a grizzly. The prints are crisp, edges sharp. That means they are not old. Maybe hours, maybe minutes. He tells the client to stay tight behind him, to keep talking. They move slower now. The creek bends left, and the banks steepen a little, forming a kind of shallow trench with willows leaning over it. The guide is just about to step around that bend when the wind shifts, just a little swirl on his cheek. He smells it, that heavy, wild smell. Wet dog, old meat, dirt, bear. Before his brain has time to process anything, the brush 10 meters ahead explodes. A big grizzly stands up out of the willows like the ground grew fur. It is a boar, huge shoulders, head like a bowling ball with eyes, scars on its muzzle. For a half second, it just stares at them, like it is as surprised as they are. Then it drops to all fours and comes. He said it did not look like running. It looked like the earth was moving under it. Those front legs pounding, claws like knives, water spraying up from the creek. The sound was this low thunder, like distant drums getting closer with every step. The distance between them goes from 10 meters to 5 meters in the time it takes to swear. The guide raises the rifle and tries to get the bead on its chest. But the bear is coming head-on, low, weaving through the willow stalks. The front sight jumps with every heartbeat. He fires, the shot crashes against the canyon walls, but he knows as soon as the recoil hits his shoulder that the hit was not perfect. The bear hunches but does not fall. It screams, this deep roar that you feel in your spine more than in your ears, and now it is both hurt and enraged. He has no time for another calm shot. The bear slams into him like a truck. The rifle gets knocked sideways, his feet leave the creek bed, and he hits the water and rocks on his back. Cold shock goes through him, and then there is weight. A lot of weight. A lot of weight. Teeth flash, he slams his arms up trying to guard his face and neck. The bear bites down on his forearm. He feels pressure, then a sickening crunch like a thick branch breaking. Pain flares up his arm like fire. The smell of the bear is in his nose, hot breath, saliva, musk. The sound is snarling and his own breathing, fast and ragged. He told me the one thing that kept him from panicking completely was every piece of training he had ever gotten about predatory versus defensive attacks. Hurt boar, close range, looks like a fight over space and surprise, not a straight-up hunting attack. So he curls, protects his neck, keeps his legs between him and the bear's body as much as he can. He is not playing dead exactly, but he is not trying to punch the thing in the nose either. That is movie nonsense. At first, the guide is terrified. The client is going to run or do something that gets both of them killed. Instead, the client does the one useful thing he can do in that moment. He grabs a big rock from the creek and starts smashing it down on the bear's rump and spine, yelling like his life depends on it, because it does. The bear lifts its head just enough to snap at the client. That shift in weight gives the guide a tiny opening. With his free hand, he reaches for the handgun on his chest rig. His fingers are slick with his own blood, but they find the grip. He rips it out of the holster and shoves it into the patch of fur under the bear's armpit, where he knows there is less bone and more lung. He cannot see. It is all feel. Knee in his ribs, fur in his teeth, water soaking his back. He pulls the trigger, once, twice, 3 times. The sound is deafening, like a bomb in a metal drum. The bear roars and jerks. For a horrible second, it seems like it might clamp down harder out of pure rage. Then the weight changes. The animal shudders, grunts, and slumps sideways into the creek. Its head thumps onto the rocks, inches from the guide's chest. The world goes very quiet except for the hiss of water over stones and the rasp of 2 human beings breathing like they just sprinted for their lives. Because they did, only flat on their backs. He pushes the bear's body off him with his good arm. His other arm is a mess. Teeth march deep, muscle torn, white of bone showing through in places. The client's face is gray, eyes huge, still holding the rock. They get a tourniquet on, do the quick wilderness first aid dance that keeps people from dying before the helicopter arrives. But there is no helicopter yet. They have to get back to camp first. The guide ties his mangled arm to his chest, grabs the rifle with his offhand, and starts walking, 1 step at a time, checking the brush every few meters because the last thing he wants is another bear catching the scent of blood. Sitting across from me, he showed me the scars. Teeth marks that wrapped almost completely around his forearm. He rotated his wrist and you could see how the bones had healed crooked. He said the part that still hits him in the middle of the night is not the pain. It is that feeling of the impact when that bear hit him, that instant reminder that out there he is just another animal in the channel. If you are listening to this as you fall asleep, picture that creek, cold water around your boots, and then imagine the willows exploding and the whole universe turning into fur, teeth, and gravel in 1 second. Now let's talk about story number 2, and this one is a totally different vibe. This is a story from a woman who is a wildlife biologist, tiny, sharp, tough as nails. She spends her summers in grizzly country, hiking alone with a backpack full of hair snares, cameras, and notebooks, counting bears for a living. When she came on the show, she told me about the one day that almost punched her time card for good. She is working in the northern Rockies, a place where the trees are thick and the ground is covered in huckleberry bushes. Her job that day is to check a series of hair snares, which are barbed wire loops around bait stations that collect fur when bears rub on them. It sounds simple until you remember that bait stations attract bears, and walking up to them means you are stepping into a place where bears are used to finding food. The protocol is strict. She approaches every site yelling, "Hey bear," whistling, sometimes singing stupid songs as loud as she can. She never walks straight in. She circles downwind, tries to look for movement, keeps her spray on her chest strap, safety off. By midday, she has checked a couple of snares, collected some fur, reset some cameras, and she is feeling good. The sun is out, the air smells like pine and berries, and she has that quiet feeling you get when the wild is humming, but you feel like you are moving in tune with it. She hikes toward the next site, which is down in a little draw with a creek and dense brush. The trail in is just a faint game path, branches brushing her shoulders. She keeps talking out loud, but she is also thinking about data sheets and the long hike back, and her mind starts to wander a little. She steps into the opening where the snare is, and her stomach drops. The bait tree is stripped of bark, the ground is torn up, and there is fresh bear scat everywhere. It glistens in the sun. That is how fresh it is. This is not a place where a bear was yesterday. This is current. She calls out again loud now. "Hey bear, hey bear." Coming in, nothing moves, no sound. She hears only the creek and a jay complaining somewhere uphill. She slowly moves closer, scanning the brush. The bait is gone, the logs around it are gouged by claws, the camera is tilted badly, like something slammed into it. She decides to back out and circle around the clearing so she can see more of the edges before committing. As she turns, the wind slaps her in the face from behind. In that exact second, from the far side of the clearing, a sow grizzly explodes out of the brush. She had been bedded 10 meters away with 2 cubs. The wind had been keeping her from catching human scent. That last swirl delivered the message in one breath. Now, in sow brain language, it says, "Stranger near babies, kill or chase." The sow woofs this deep booming sound from her chest, and then she is moving. She covers the distance between them like the ground is on fast forward. The biologist goes from field mode to survival mode instantly. There is no time to run, there is no time to climb. The nearest climbable tree is behind the sow. The only tool she has is the spray. Her hand is already on it. She yanks it out, raises it, and plants her feet. She always thought in that moment she would be calm and tactical. She told me she was not. Her voice cracked when she yelled, "No, bear, no." The sow comes anyway. Cub heads bobbing in the brush behind her like little fuzzy buoys. At about 5 meters, she hits the trigger. A burning orange plume shoots out from the can, a solid wall of pain hanging in the air. The sow runs straight into it. It hits her square in the face. She stumbles, paws at her eyes, coughs, and swings her head side to side so hard that spit and foam fly. The biologist keeps spraying, walking backward, trying not to trip. Her eyes are stinging now too. The backdraft hits her throat, makes it feel like she swallowed fire ants. The sow coughs, moans, and then does something that genuinely freaks her out. Instead of bolting straight away, she circles. The bear moves sideways, snorting and blinking, trying to get out of the cloud but still putting herself between the cubs and the human. The cubs scrabble up a tree, making this high-pitched chuffing sound. The sow stands there, head down, still guarding them even while her face is burning. They hold that standoff for what feels like minutes but is probably 30 seconds. The biologist keeps her voice loud and low, backing toward a more open area, spray held out like a magic wand that she knows is almost empty. The sow finally decides that pain plus loud primate equals not worth it. She drops to all fours and herds the cubs away, crashing into the brush, still moaning. The biologist does not move for a full minute after she loses sight of them. Her legs are quivering, her hands are slick with sweat, tears are running down her face, part from emotion, part from the spray in the air. Finally, she turns and power hikes out of that draw, checking over her shoulder every few steps, talking out loud just to hear the sound of her own voice. In the studio, she told me the weirdest thing was what she did that evening back at the field station. She sat down, washed the spray off as best she could, made tea, and then filled out all the paperwork. Time, location, bear behavior, her behavior. She wrote it all down like a scientist, even though inside she was replaying that giant blur of brown fur coming at her over and over. She said that was the moment she fully understood what the word respect means when people talk about grizzlies. Not fear exactly, not worship. Just a deep, permanent understanding that when you walk into their kitchen, you are the one who has to be perfect. They can be angry and confused and full of instinct. You have to be 100% on your game or you do not get to walk out. If you're listening in the dark, think about that draw. Quiet, green, full of berries. Then imagine turning and seeing a mother grizzly appear out of nowhere with that look that says you have already crossed the wrong line and now the only thing keeping you alive is 5 meters of air and a can in your hand. Now let's talk about story number 3. And this one is one of those sneaky ones where the grizzly does not charge until after you make a mistake that you do not even realize is a mistake until it is almost too late. This guest was a hardcore bow hunter, the kind of guy who loved steep country and heavy packs and doing everything the hard way. He had hunted elk for decades. He knew how to move in the woods. He did not think of himself as careless, and then he and his buddy stumbled into a perfect storm. They were in Wyoming in September, in that amazing stretch of time when the leaves are just starting to turn and bull elk are screaming their heads off in dark timber. They had hiked in miles before daylight, crossed creeks, climbed ridges, and now they were side-hilling through a belt of thick evergreens and deadfall, bugling and cow-calling back and forth with a bull that sounded fired up. The bull was below them somewhere, in a drainage choked with blowdowns and little open pockets of grass. He would bugle, they would move, cow-call, then set up and wait. The kind of chess game that can take hours. The wind was decent coming up the hill. They were paying attention to that. What they were not paying attention to was something else. Earlier in the day, they had noticed ravens circling and what looked like maybe an old carcass way down the drainage. They had shrugged it off. Elk die all the time out there. Winter kill, wolves, hunters from previous weeks. They were focused on the living bull. The idea that there might be a grizzly bedded on or near that carcass did not fully click. They drop into a narrow finger ridge with a faint trail beaten into the duff. It is shaded, cool, quiet, except for their soft steps and the occasional bugle echoing from below. One guy goes a little ahead to set up for a shot. The other hangs back to call. The shooter rounds a clump of young firs and almost steps onto a mess of bones and hide. It is not old. A dead elk, mostly eaten, ribs showing, spine, some meat still clinging. It smells like death and dirt and stomach contents. The ground around it is churned up. There are huge tracks in the mud, fresh. Grizzly tracks. The scatter pattern screams, this is an active food source. His brain goes, we should not be here. At the exact second, he hears a noise that confirms that thought. A deep, short huff from the other side of the carcass, followed by a crash. The bear was bedded just beyond the dead elk, in a little pocket of shade under some blowdown. The bull they had been calling to had probably been aware of that bear for hours and was moving carefully. These two humans walked right into the worst possible spot. Between a grizzly and its food, the boar comes around the carcass in a blur. Shoulders rolling, fur matted with dried blood, eyes wide. It is not guessing, it is reacting. There are things on its dinner table that should not be there. It is going to move them. The hunter does what every bow hunter hates to do. He drops his bow. It falls into the duff as he reaches for the bear spray on his belt. His buddy behind him cannot see the bear yet, but hears the sound in his friend's voice when he yells, "Bear! Bear! Bear!" The bear covers that space in heartbeat time. The bow hunter gets the can up and sprays almost blind as the bear hits the cloud. The spray hits, with the bear's momentum takes it through. It slams into him like a linebacker. He goes backward over a log, slams his back into the ground, and loses his breath in one ugly grunt. Claws rake across his chest and shoulders, ripping his shirt. Teeth snap inches from his face. He shoves his forearm up and feels jaws clamp down. There is that same familiar description, that cracking branch feeling in the bones. He is trying to curl, trying to protect his neck, but the bear is so close and so sudden that he is just reacting on instinct. His buddy screams and empties his own spray from behind and to the side, doing his best not to hit his friend in the face. Now there are two clouds of blinding burn hanging in the air, and the grizzly is in the middle of them. It roars, shakes its head, paws at its own eyes, flings strings of saliva and foam across the carcass. Finally it breaks off. Not because it has suddenly become kind, but because its face is on fire and it cannot see. It crashes away through the deadfall, snapping branches off like twigs, moaning and coughing. The sound of it moving through the timber fades, but the silence after is not comforting. It is thin and brittle. They both know that bear could circle back. The shooter rolls over and pushes himself up. His forearm is mangled. Deep teeth marks, blood pouring down to his fingers. There are claw cuts on his chest and neck, stinging like somebody dragged nails through him. He can feel every heartbeat in those wounds. They do a tourniquet. They talk in those clipped, focused sentences that people use when they are trying not to lose their minds. You good? Can you walk? We are getting out now. The elk they were calling to is gone. The dead elk belongs to the bear. The whole situation has reset to the bear's reality. They hike out in a wide arc, as far from that carcass as they can manage. Every shadow looks like moving fur. Every wind gust sounds like a growl. When they finally get out to open country and can call for help, the adrenaline fades and the shaking starts hard. Sitting in the studio, the hunter said the mistake was not that they went after a bugling bull. That is what you do. The mistake was that they walked past obvious bird activity and a probable kill site, and did not fully understand that in grizzly country, that is a giant red flashing sign that says, "Do not come here if you like your skin where it is." He laughed when he said he now looks at every circling raven like it is a warning bell. But under the laugh was that look you see in the eyes of a lot of people who have been touched by a big predator. They know exactly how short the line is between awesome morning in the elk woods and lying on the ground hoping your friend hits the bear with spray before it hits your throat. If you are half asleep listening, picture that thick timber, the quiet trail, the excitement of a big bull nearby, and then the sudden realization that you are standing at a bloody dinner table and the chef just got home. Now let's talk about story number 4, and this one is a trail running story that should be printed on every brochure that makes mountain running look like just smiling people in shorts on sunny ridges. This guest was an ultra runner from Montana who had started running trails to train for races and ended up running into one of the worst possible test scenarios for human legs and bear legs. It is late spring, snow mostly gone from the lower slopes, but still clinging to the high peaks. He loves evenings, so he goes out after work, laces up his shoes, throws a light pack on with some water, a jacket, and a can of bear spray on the chest strap. He knows the area. It is a popular trail right outside a small town, climbing through spruce and fir up to an open ridge with a view that makes your chest feel big. He starts jogging up, hitting that steady pace where his breathing and stride line up. There are a couple of cars at the trailhead, but he passes the first hikers early, and then it is just him and the forest. The light is golden, coming through the trees in bands. Birds are chattering. There are old snow patches in the shady spots. He knows there are bears around. He has seen black bears on this trail before. He has never seen a grizzly here, but he knows that does not mean much. Things move. Range expands. He claps now and then, calls out a hey bear here and there, but he also has music playing quietly in one earbud, more for rhythm than anything. He hits a flatter section where the trail winds through thick brush and then up a series of tight switchbacks. The brush is high, about chest height, full of last year's dry stems and this year's green leaves. Visibility is not great. He is moving fast. That is the problem. He rounds a sharp switchback and almost runs straight into the rump of a grizzly. The bear is in the trail, broadside at first, then spinning as it realizes something just bumped its hindquarters. It had been feeding in the brush, head down. It did not hear him in time. They surprise each other at the exact same moment. He slams on the brakes, feet skidding in the dirt. For a second, they are maybe 4 meters apart. He can see individual hairs, the curve of muscles under the fur. His entire world shrinks to that brown shape in its eyes. The bear roars and comes. It is not a bluff. It rockets up the trail toward him like it has been launched. He whirls to run downhill, completely breaking every bit of advice written on those trailhead signs, but that is what his body does. The primitive part of his brain says, get away, and his legs obey. He barely gets 2 strides before he catches a root hidden under the dirt. His toe snags, his momentum goes forward, and he hits the ground chest first. The impact knocks the air out of him. His chin hits so hard his teeth clack. The trail fills his vision. He feels more than hears the footsteps pounding behind him. Some part of his rational brain breaks through. He rolls onto his back, gasping for air, and reaches for the spray on his chest. His fingers close around it. He rips it free and thrusts it out, finger mashing the trigger as the bear closes the last gap. The spray blasts out in a thick yellow stream, straight into the bear's face at a distance where he could have touched its nose with the can. The bear's head jerks to the side like someone slapped it with a wet towel. It makes this horrible coughing roar, like a lion choking. Its front claws swipe the air above his legs. He feels wind from the movement. That is how close it is. The bear pulls up, pawing at its eyes, shaking its head so hard that spit and snot fly in strings. It stumbles sideways off the trail into the brush, breaking stems as thick as his wrist. He keeps spraying even as the mist blows back into his own face. His eyes start burning, his nose and throat feel like they are on fire, but he does not let go until the can sputters empty. He rolls onto his side, coughing, tears streaming. The world is blurred, noisy. Somewhere in that mess of sensation, he hears the bear crashing away downslope, still coughing, still moaning. Then it is quiet again except for birds that start up in little hesitant chirps. He lies there a long time. His knee hurts from the fall. His elbows are scraped raw. His hands are shaking so badly that he can barely get the cap back on the empty can. When he finally stands up, his legs feel like they belong to someone else. He walks down. No more running. The same trail that felt like a playground 30 minutes earlier now feels like a place full of eyes. He calls out loud every few steps, partly for any bears that might be around, partly to convince himself he still has a voice. In the studio, he said he stopped wearing music in both ears after that. It was such a simple chain of events. A steep trail, thick brush, a quiet evening, a small bit of music, a grizzly feeding in a bad blind corner. There is no villain in that story. Just 2 animals moving on the same ribbon of dirt and physics deciding who hits the ground first. If you are listening, picture sprinting around a corner with your heart pumping from exertion and then suddenly seeing a wall of brown fur where air was supposed to be. That is how fast the world tries to kill you sometimes. Now let's talk about story number 5, and this one is a fishing camp story that almost turned into a horror movie. The guest was this older Canadian guy, soft-spoken, with that calm confidence you only get from spending your entire life in the bush. He grew up on lakes, made a living as a fishing guide, and thought he understood bears as well as any person can. Then one fall he had a run-in with a grizzly that went straight through the thin line between wildlife encounter and I might die in my socks right now. He is running a small backcountry camp on a lake that is only reachable by boat or floatplane. There are a few wooden cabins, an old dock, and a cook shack. Business has slowed down for the shoulder season. so it is just him and one friend staying in camp between groups, shutting things down, fixing boards, pulling boats out of the water. The weather is that cold, clear kind, where you see stars from horizon to horizon at night, and the first breath in the morning fogs in front of your face. They know there are grizzlies around. They have seen them across the lake, digging in the gravel, flipping logs, doing bear things. They keep camp clean. Fish guts get tossed far from cabins. Food stays in the main building. Garbage goes into metal containers. They do not leave coolers lying around like a buffet. One night, after a long day of work, they cook a simple meal in the cook shack, clean up, and then go back to their separate cabins to sleep. The guide's cabin is small. One room, wooden bunks, a tiny wood stove, and a single door with an old metal latch. The walls are solid, not canvas. He feels safe enough. He has a rifle in the corner, but he has never had to use it on anything bigger than a moose. He wakes up sometime around 3 in the morning to a sound that his sleeping brain does not recognize at first. A heavy, slow scraping on wood. Not the wind, not a mouse, something big moving along the outer wall. He holds his breath and listens. The scraping moves toward the door. Then there is a boom as something heavy leans on it. The latch rattles. The door shudders. He hears breathing, deep and loud, on the other side of a plank that suddenly feels much too thin. He whispers to himself, "That is a bear." His voice sounds tiny in the dark. Another slam. The door bows inward an inch, then springs back. The old latch holds, but he can hear one of the screws tear out of the dry wood. The animal outside huffs, sniffs at the crack near the floor, exhales hot air that he can actually feel as a faint draft on his bare feet. He moves as quietly as he can, sliding out of his bunk, reaching for the rifle. It is leaned in the corner, unloaded, because for years he has kept ammunition separate like a responsible person. Now, suddenly, that looks less smart. He has to move across the room to grab the ammunition from a shelf while the bear continues to test the door like a giant furry locksmith. Another slam. The door bows again, more this time. A tiny splinter of wood pops off and lands on the floor. The bear growls, a low rumble that vibrates in his chest. It is no longer just curious, it is committed. Something about the smells or sounds in that cabin has convinced it there might be food or something worth investigating. He gets the rifle in his hands, grabs a cartridge, and with fingers that feel clumsy and thick, slides it into the chamber. The metallic click is loud in the small space. He works the bolt, points the barrel at the door, and takes a breath. He does not want to shoot through the wall blindly. Last thing he wants is a wounded bear full of adrenaline on the other side of a half-broken door. He decides to try to scare it hard before he even thinks about using the rifle on flesh. He raises the rifle and slams the buttstock into the floor as hard as he can, shouting at the same time. The sound booms like a drum, the vibration running up the walls. The bear stops for a heartbeat. Then it roars and hits the door again, harder. The latch tears free from one side. The top of the door bows inward enough that he can see a bit of moonlight around the frame. Claws appear at the edge, scraping, seeking. He realizes talking quietly is not going to cut it. He starts yelling full volume, "Hey, hey, get out of here!" He kicks the bottom of the door. The bear answers with another roar that sounds angry now, not just curious. It is worked up. He makes a decision that could have gone either way. He steps closer to the door, angles the barrel upward, and fires a shot through the roof right above it. The blast inside the cabin is like a flashbang. His ears ring. Smoke fills the small room. A chunk of wood splinters out through the shingles. Outside, the bear loses its mind. The sudden explosion at such close range scares it in a way yelling did not. It crashes against the porch, claws scraping, then he hears it gallop away. You can hear pound, pound, pound of huge paws hitting dirt, and then the splash as it hits the shallow water at the edge of the lake. For a second, he thinks it is going to come around the side and hit a window, but the sound moves down the shore instead. He stands there in the gun smoke, in his underwear, rifle in his hands, heart racing. The cabin is dark except for the moonglow coming through the small window and the new little hole in the roof above the door. His ears are ringing so hard that he is not sure if the bear is truly gone or if he just cannot hear it. He stays awake the rest of the night, sitting in a chair facing the door, rifle across his lap, listening. Every creak makes him tense. Every tiny sound from the lake feels big. Only when the first light starts to seep into the sky does he finally unlock the door and step out. The porch boards are torn. There are deep claw marks on the door itself, some of them plowing right through the old paint and half into the wood. In the dirt in front of the cabin, the tracks are huge and clear. The bear had walked right up, stood on the stoop, and worked that door like it was a puzzle. Later that day, he and his friend find fish scales and a bit of grease near the cabin that should have been cleaned up better. One sloppy moment after dinner, a little shiny patch on the ground, might have been all it took to convince that bear that this building was worth investigating. Sitting across from me, he admitted that he had gotten lazy. Years of no trouble had made him relax his standards. That one night, a bear showed up to remind him that in wild country, the grading happens every day and the test is pass or get eaten. If you are drifting off, picture being in a tiny wooden room with a thin door, hearing the wood creak under the weight of something heavier and stronger than any human, feeling the breath of it under the crack, and knowing that if a couple of old screws give up, you are going to be face to face with everything your nightmares ever drew in the dark. That is the first 5. We have gone from an Alaskan guide fighting a grizzly in a creek, to a field biologist spraying a sow at 5 meters, to bow hunters stumbling into a grizzly's pantry, to an ultra runner wiping out at the feet of a charging bear, to a fishing guide listening to his cabin door flex under a half-ton of curiosity. Now let's talk about story number 6. And this one is about a guy who thought the sketchy part of his sheep hunt was the cliffs, not the fact that he was basically a human burrito in a sleeping bag on a ridge that a grizzly used like a hallway. He is a hardcore mountain hunter, the kind of man who lives for thin air and loose rock. He is solo in Alaska on a dull sheep hunt. It is late season, cold enough that every breath is a little cloud, and the wind sounds like it has teeth. He hikes all day, side-hilling through shale and snow patches, glassing rams, picking routes that make normal people dizzy just looking at them. He pushes hard and ends up way higher and farther than he planned. Evening comes in fast in those mountains. The peaks turn pink, then purple, then just big black teeth against the sky. He realizes he is not making it back to his main camp before dark. There is no safe way down the cliffs in the pitch black without being stupid, so he does the only smart thing. He digs out a little ledge in the scree, tucks himself in behind a boulder, and sets up a tiny bivvy for the night. We are talking minimalist. No big tent. Just a thin foam pad, a sleeping bag, and a little sil-nylon tarp he can pull over himself if the wind shifts. He cooks a quick, freeze-dried meal on a tiny stove, eats it, packs every bit of food, trash, and cooking gear into a dry bag, and walks it a decent distance down the slope to stash it in the rocks. He knows the rules. Do not sleep with food. Do not leave your bag smelling like dinner. He does everything the right way. Then he crawls into the bag, zips it almost all the way up, pulls his hat down over his ears, and lays there listening to the mountain breathe. The stars are unreal. There is no light pollution. Just thousands of cold pinpricks over his face. Wind hums over the ridges. Now and then a rock tinkles loose somewhere in the night. He can feel his heartbeat slowing as exhaustion finally wins. He wakes up sometime later in the absolute darkness before dawn. No stars now. Clouds have rolled in. It is that kind of black where you cannot see your own hand. At first, he is not sure why he is awake. Then he hears it. Crunch. Not the random tinkling of loose rocks. Something big is moving along the same little ledge he used to get to his sleeping spot. It is not in a hurry. It is walking. He holds his breath. The sound gets closer. The hair on his arm stands up under the fabric. He slowly moves his hand inside the bag toward his chest, where his bear spray is clipped to a strap. His rifle is outside the bag, leaned against the rock within arm's reach, but there is no way he can get to it without unzipping and sitting up. Whatever is coming is almost on top of him. The smell hits him next. That wild bear smell. Wet fur, earth, old meat, musk. It blows over him in a faint gust of wind. His heart starts hammering. He can feel it in his teeth. Then there is a shadow over him. He hears breathing. Deep, slow, like a bellows. The fabric of his sleeping bag presses down a little over his legs like someone leaned on it. The grizzly has walked right up to this weird nylon cocoon lying on its usual travel route and is now investigating. He does not move. He does not even blink. He told me his whole body went cold and hot at the same time. He has read all the advice. Do not surprise them. Do not scream. do not flail. But nothing in the pamphlets prepares you for feeling a paw set down inches from your hip through 1 finger-thick layer of synthetic fabric. The bear sniffs along the length of the bag. He can feel each puff of breath as a slight movement of air. When it reaches his head, it pauses. The weight of it shifts. The bag presses in around his shoulders. He realizes the bear is standing over him, literally bridged above his body, head lowered to smell his face. He can hear little clicking sounds as its claws touch rock around him. It makes a low, almost conversational grunt. In that moment, his brain fires off 100 thoughts. If I move, it might grab my head. If I do not move, it might decide to see what is inside this thing by tearing it open. He inches his hand up under his chin, ready to rip the zipper down and get the spray if he has to. Every centimeter feels like it takes an hour. The bear keeps sniffing. He finally cannot help it. He whispers very softly but firmly, "Hey bear, easy, easy." The sound of his voice changes something. The bear snorts, blows hot air down the neck of the bag, and then moves. The pressure lightens. It takes a step and its paw comes down right on his thigh. Hundreds of kilograms pressing onto one human femur through a layer of down and nylon. The pain is instant and white hot. He bites his lip to stop from yelling. If the bear fully commits its weight, it can snap his leg like a twig. He feels the muscles in the animal's leg flex, the claws scraping at the fabric. Then, just as suddenly, the weight shifts off. He hears more crunching footsteps moving past his head. The smell fades. The sound of rocks sliding trickles away. After a minute, there is nothing but wind and his own ragged breathing. He does not move for a long time. He lies there, staring into the dark inside of the bag, feeling his thigh throb, feeling pins and needles in his arms from being frozen in one position. Eventually, as the sky lightens just a bit, he unzips the bag, every tooth of the zipper sounding like a shout. Outside, the world looks the same but different. There are fresh tracks on the ledge, some of them almost on top of his boot prints from earlier. There are paw prints so close to where his head was that he can put his hand down inside the depression. The dry bag with his food is untouched way down the slope, but the bear had come right to the only warm, meat-scented thing on the ridge. Him. He stands there on that ledge, looking into the pale blue dawn, shaking, and realizes one simple fact. His plan relied on doing everything right. The bear did not care. It still almost stepped through his leg because he built his bed on its trail. In the studio, he laughed a little when he told me that after that hunt, he started bivvying in way stranger places. Little rock islands off the travel corridors. Tiny spots on broken slopes. Anywhere except neat, flat ledges that animals like to use. The mountains did not change. He did. If you were lying there listening, imagine being wrapped in a blanket on your floor and having a car tire pressed down on your thigh, then lift. And the only reason you are not broken is because the driver changed his mind at the last second. That is what that night felt like. Now let's talk about story number 7, and this one is water. This is a rafting guide who almost got his entire crew taken out because he forgot that when the salmon are running and there are fish carcasses on every gravel bar, you are driving a floating buffet line through somebody else's dining room. He works summers as a whitewater guide in the interior of British Columbia. Long braided rivers, cold green water, big sweepers, and whole families of grizzly bears roaming the banks. Most days they see bears at a comfortable distance. A sow and cubs turning over rocks, a big boar standing mid-river scooping fish like a forklift. The guides point them out, everybody takes photos, and the boat keeps moving. One trip late in the season is different. Water levels are low, fish carcasses are everywhere, and the weather is gloomy. He has a full raft of clients, a mix of tourists and a couple of quiet fishermen who have seen a lot of things but would very much like not to see the inside of a bear's mouth. They are floating a long, slow stretch between rapids. The current pulls them down one channel while other braids peel off into shallower water. On the left bank, there is a wide gravel bar absolutely covered in dead salmon. Some are just heads and spines, some are whole fish washed up by the last little rise in water. As they drift closer, he notices tracks, big clawed prints in the wet sand, scat full of berries and fish pieces. The place looks like a bear cafeteria. He starts to angle the raft to the opposite side of the channel to give some space. Then, from behind a small rise on the gravel bar, a grizzly stands up. It is huge, broad-shouldered, fur matted around its neck from being in and out of the water. It has a fish hanging out of its mouth like a prop from a cartoon. The clients gasp. A couple of them point cameras. The bear looks at them, no fear in its eyes at all, just calculation. He tells everyone in the raft, calm but firm, stay seated, no sudden movements, hands inside. He digs the oars in, trying to swing them away from the bar, but the current is tricky. They are in the main tongue, and it is taking them closer no matter what he does. The bear drops the fish, walks down to the water's edge, and steps in. It is now wading straight toward them. You can see the waterline sliding up its legs. Its head is level with the raft. The clients go very quiet. Even the nervous laughers shut up. The guide knows a few things instantly. They cannot out-paddle the current to go backwards. They cannot get to the far bank in time. If the bear decides to climb in, they are in a rubber dish with nowhere to go. He also remembers very clearly the training about not having bear spray easily accessible on a boat, unless you like the idea of everyone coughing and blind in the middle of a river. The spray is in his dry box. Useless right now. The bear reaches a shallow spot where the river is only up to its chest and stops. It stares at them, ears slightly back, head swinging side to side. The raft is drifting closer. 10 meters, 8 meters. He can see water dripping off its belly. He makes a choice. He stands up on the guide frame, which is not normally what you do when balance matters, and makes himself as big as possible. He raises his voice, deep and loud. "Hey bear, get out of here." Get. He slaps the water with one oar, sending up a big spray. He bangs the metal frame with his other hand so it rings. The bear takes a couple steps forward into slightly deeper water, then stops again. It is maybe 5 meters away now, close enough that if it lunged, it could be on the raft in 2 bounds. The clients are frozen. One woman starts quietly crying. A man grips the side rope so hard his knuckles are white. The guide keeps yelling. He slams the oar blades on the surface, making loud cracks. He stomps on the floor of the raft. He is trying to be a very noisy, very annoying weird thing, not a panicked prey animal. The bear woofs a short explosive sound and suddenly surges sideways instead of straight in. It splashes through the shallows, crosses the channel in front of the raft by a few meters, and climbs out on the other side, water pouring off its fur. As it passes, it turns its head and gives them a long look, like it is filing their faces away in some mental folder labeled "What Not to Eat Today." Then it lopes up the bank and disappears into the brush. The raft drifts through the space where the bear was standing half a minute earlier. The guide's knees finally start to shake. He sits down, takes a breath, and looks at his clients. Their eyes are all huge. One of the fishermen laughs once, this nervous bark of a laugh, then shakes his head. Later that night, back at the takeout, the guide admitted that if that bear had decided to come for them, there was nothing he could have done physically to stop it. The only tool he had was sound and posture. He showed me a photo one of the clients took right before it turned. You can see the bear's head and shoulders, river water streaming off its fur, eyes locked on the lens. The distance between them might as well have been the thickness of the camera glass. If you were listening in bed, imagine sitting in a rubber boat, feet braced against a floor that flexes, with a grizzly standing in the river almost close enough to touch, and your only move is to make yourself big and loud and hope the bear decides it has better things to do. Now let's talk about story number 8, and this one is pure speed. A mountain biker who found out that when a grizzly decides to cross the trail at the exact moment you are bombing down it, your fancy carbon frame and disc brakes do not mean anything at all. He is one of those obsessed riders. Lives for single track, long climbs, big descents, that feeling of floating when the bike and your body and the trail all line up. He rides in Montana and grizzly country, and he knows all the standard advice. Carry spray, ride with friends, do not go full speed in thick brush where you cannot see ahead very far. On this particular day, he breaks at least 2 of those rules. His buddy bails last minute, but it is a beautiful autumn afternoon and he does not want to waste it. The larches are turning gold, the air smells like dry needles and cold dirt. He tells himself he will be extra careful and goes anyway. The climb up is uneventful. He grinds up Fire Road, then single track, passing huckleberry patches and open slopes. He sees some old scat, some turned over rocks, but nothing fresh. At the top, the view is insane. Peaks in every direction, low light hitting the hillsides like a painting. He takes a photo, eats a snack, tightens his helmet strap, and points the bike downhill. The first part of the descent is open. Wide meadows, flowy trail. He can see hundreds of meters ahead. He lets it roll, picking up speed, tires buzzing, suspension working. He whoops once just for the joy of it. Then the trail dives into trees. Now the forest closes in. The trail weaves between trunks, dips in and out of shallow gullies, and cuts through sections of thick undergrowth where visibility shrinks to a few bike lengths. He knows he should back it off a little, but his skill and confidence are high and the speed is addictive. He is flying. He comes around a blind corner and the world changes. Right in front of him, filling the trail, is a grizzly bear. It is crossing at an angle, moving from a berry patch on one side toward a fallen log on the other. It hears the bike at the last possible fraction of a second. He sees its head snap toward him, eyes wide, ears flattening. The distance between them is maybe 10 meters when they lock eyes. At the speed he is going, that is about half a breath. He clamps both brakes. The back tire skids, the front tire digs in. The bike tries to obey physics and throws him. He flies over the handlebars in a slow-motion cartwheel, arms flailing, chest open to the ground. He hits hard, sliding in dirt and pine needles, scraping skin off his forearms, ripping his jersey. When he stops, he is on his back, head downhill, staring up at green branches. For a second he hears nothing but the rush of blood in his own ears. Then he hears crashing. The bear. It is in that state of pure shock and reaction. Something hit its space at high speed. Now there is a flopping thing on the ground making noise. It does exactly what a grizzly does in that situation. It charges. He scrambles to his knees and reaches instinctively for the spray can on his chest strap. Thank whatever you want that he wore biking that day and not stuffed in a pack. His fingers close on the handle. He pulls it out, flips the safety, and turns just as the bear closes the last few meters. He can see individual teeth. He can see spit flying from its open mouth. He can see the muscles in its shoulders bunched like coiled springs. The sound is a roar that feels like someone slamming a door inside his skull. He sprays, hard. A solid stream straight into the bear's face. The mist hits the bear's nose and open mouth. It inhales the cloud. For one terrifying moment, momentum carries the animal even closer until its front claws are almost on his shoes. Then the pain arrives in the bear's brain. It slams to a stop, front paws. It throws its head back, shaking it side to side, eyes squeezed shut. That roar turns into a choked cough. It paws at its muzzle, snorting and sneezing. Its whole body language flips from attack to get this fire off my face. He keeps spraying, backing away on rubbery legs, coughing as the secondary cloud hits his own throat and eyes. Tears stream down his cheeks. The world blurs. He hears the bear crashing off to the side, through brush, snapping saplings. The sound fades as it puts distance between itself and the invisible pain. He sinks down onto a rock, gasping, heart jackhammering in his chest. His front wheel is bent, his handlebars crooked. The trail looks different now. It is no longer a fun roller coaster. It is a place where a near death just happened in less time than it takes to take a drink of water. In the studio, he said the part that messed with him after was how little time he had. There was no warning bark, no long-distance sighting. 1 second he was flowing through trees, the next he was airborne, the next he was staring at the open mouth of a grizzly at close range. The only reason he is alive is because he wore the spray properly and his hand went to it without conscious thought. He told me he still rides, still loves that sport, but when he gets into dense cover now, he has one finger hooked on the spray safety and his speed drops way down. He said, I realized I was writing checks of my bike that my body could not cash if I met the wrong animal at the wrong corner. If you were listening while your eyes get heavy, imagine flying down a forest trail, wind in your face, and then suddenly the path turns into a wall of brown fur and everything you loved doing is now the thing that almost killed you. Now let's talk about story number 9, and this one is winter. Snow, silence, and a den that was not as empty as a trapper hoped. This guest was an old-school trapper from the Yukon, one of those men who can read snow like most people read text messages. He runs long lines by snow machine, checks sets, and lives alone for weeks in a cabin that looks like it fell out of a history book. It is late winter. Deep snow in the trees, river ice thick, nights long. He is running his line, bouncing along on the snow machine with a sled of gear behind him, breath freezing in his beard. He knows his country very well. He knows approximate locations of bear dens and tends to avoid them in winter. You do not want to bother a sleeping grizzly unless you like surprises. There is a section of his line that crosses a steep, forested slope. Usually he stays on a narrow bench that contours across the hill, but this year heavy windfall has blocked that route and he has been forced to detour higher. He told himself it was fine. He'd been up there before, he just needed to be careful. He is moving slow along a side hill, machine tilted, track chewing through crust and powder. The engine is the main sound in the world, a steady drone. Snow-loaded spruce bend over the trail like they are trying to whisper in his ear. As he comes out into a slightly more open patch, he notices a lump in the snow upslope. At first he thinks it is a drift shaped by the wind. Then he sees steam rising from a little hole in it. Just a faint wisp, but in the cold air it is clear. He hits the throttle a little too hard as his panic hits and the machine jumps forward. That is the worst thing that could have happened in that moment. The snowpack beneath him is not as solid as it looked. The edge of his track undercuts the drift. The whole side of the little mound collapses. What he thought was just a drift was the roof of a den. His snow machine slides half a meter down and slams into the side of the now exposed cavity. Everything goes quiet except his engine. He flicks the kill switch. For a second, the world is just his own breathing and the ticking of hot metal. Then he hears another sound from inside the hole. A deep, angry growl. The snow in front of him erupts. A grizzly's head pushes out, eyes wide, fur full of frost, ears laid back. It has been in there sleeping away the winter, and now some loud machine has just crashed through its ceiling. It is not happy. The bear hauls itself out of the den, snow sliding off its back. It is not fully fat and sleek like an autumn. It is a little gaunt from the winter fast, but that does not make it less dangerous. If anything, it makes it snappier. It stands there on the slope, breathing steam, staring at the man and the machine that just invaded its living room. He is sitting on a heavy piece of metal with a dead engine. His snowshoes are tied to the sled. His rifle is scabbarded on the machine. His bear spray is in his parka pocket. The space between den and track is maybe 5 meters, uphill, in deep snow. This is not an ideal tactical position. The bear roars and comes downhill. Snow flies as its front legs punch through the crust. It is not as fast in deep snow as it would be on dry ground, but it is still plenty fast. The trapper does not have time to unclip, reach for the rifle, shoulder it, and get a clean shot before the bear is in his lap. He goes for the spray. His gloved hand is clumsy, but it finds the can. He yanks it out, rips off the safety, and stands up on the machine seat, half slipping, half climbing. The bear closes to 3 meters, 2 meters. He sprays. The orange cloud blasts out and blooms in the cold air. The overspray hangs in the stillness like a curtain. It hits the bear right as it opens its mouth to roar again. The big animal inhales a lung full of capsaicin and instantly changes its mind about everything. It chokes, coughs, and stops its forward progress. It shakes its head, pawing at its face, snow flying everywhere. It backs up, almost falls into its own den hole, then wheels sideways, crashing into the small stand of saplings just uphill. It moans, that awful crying sound angry bears make when they are in pain. The trapper, having sprayed in a slight upwind direction, gets a face full of his own medicine. His eyes burn so bad he cannot see. Snot pours from his nose. He drops to his knees on the snow, blinking tears, gasping. For long seconds it is just pain and confusion for both mammals. He hears the bear moving away through the trees, branches cracking. He waits, listening, counting slowly in his head, until everything is silent again. Then he fumbles for snow, packs it into his eyes, rinses his face with handfuls of powder to melt the worst of the burn. It helps just enough that he can open his eyes to slits. The den is now a big raw hole in the slope. Warm air still drifts out. Tracks lead away into the forest where the bear fled. He knows it might come back. A den is not something a bear gives up lightly. He also knows he does not want to be anywhere near when it does. He gets the machine turned around like a drunk moose on ice, fires it back up through stinging eyes, and limps out of there, heart pounding. Back at the cabin, he sits at his little table with a cup of coffee and a face that feels like he spent the day in a pepper factory, and he laughs, this dry, wheezing laugh. Not because it is funny, but because there is nothing else left to do with that much adrenaline except leak it out through sound. On the podcast, he said he had always known to avoid certain slopes where he had seen dens before. What he had not truly internalized was that in big country, there are always more dens. The snow hides them. You think you know every wrinkle in your trap line, and then one day your machine drops half a meter and the mountain literally growls at you. If you are listening in your warm bed, imagine driving a loud machine through perfect white silence, and then suddenly you have punched your way into the living room of a half-awake grizzly that has been practicing being hungry all winter. Now let's talk about story number 10, and this one is a tiny tent in a big valley. A couple sleeping under nylon who found out that sometimes grizzlies do not just sniff and walk away. Sometimes they commit to the idea that this weird flapping thing might be food. The guest was a guy in his 30s who had been on a long backpacking trip with his girlfriend in the Northern Rockies. They were not clueless. They had read all the park literature, watched the videos, even taken a backcountry safety class. They carried spray, they stored food properly. They were the people who corrected other campers about leaving garbage out. On day 4 of their trip, they make camp in a gorgeous meadow at the edge of treeline. There is a little stream, open grass, and big peaks rising up around them. They pick a spot for the tent that is slightly raised for drainage with good visibility. Then, like they were taught, they walk their food about 100 meters away and hang it properly from a sturdy branch. They cook by the stream, eat, clean their pots, brush their teeth away from camp, spit into bushes, all the little details they have drilled into themselves. The air cools fast as the sun drops. Stars come out. They crawl into their little 2-person tent, zip the door, and slide into their bags. Everything feels perfect. No dream, no noise in particular, just that weird sense that flips a switch in your brain. He listens. The world outside is still. He can hear his girlfriend breathing next to him. The stream is a soft hiss in the distance. Then he hears a sound that should not be there. A very faint, repetitive huffing and a kind of wet slapping. At first he cannot place it. Then it hits him. Something big is breathing just outside the tent. The wet slapping sound is a nose working against fabric. The side wall bows inward a couple of inches. The silhouette of a large muzzle presses against the nylon, snuffling down the seam. He smells it, that heavy, wild smell. Not a deer, not an elk. Bear. His heart starts hammering so hard he is sure the animal can hear it. He reaches very slowly down to the side pocket of the tent where his spray is. He touches the can with his fingertips and freezes because the pressure on the fabric increases. The head is now right where his hand would push out if he grabbed the spray. The bear moves along the tent, sniffing. It bumps into their packs, which they had left in the vestibule with only clean clothes and gear. That fact does not matter now. To the bear, this is a weird new object in its meadow, and it wants to understand it using the only tools it has, which are nose, paws, and teeth. The girlfriend wakes up. He whispers so quietly it is almost air. Do not move. Bear. She goes perfectly still, eyes wide in the dim light of his tiny headlamp, which he flips on and then quickly covers so it only puts a faint glow inside. They listen together as the bear circles. Then the sound changes. There is a scrape, a rip. The fabric sags over their faces. The bear reacts to the movement, slaps at the sagging wall with a paw. The whole structure shudders. A pole snaps with a loud crack. The man decides that if they stay zipped in, they are just a soft bundle inside a toy. They need a way out. He whispers to her, "When I say now, you roll out the other side and run toward the rocks. Do not run straight. Zigzag a bit. Spray is here. I will try to hit it." She nods once, tears in her eyes. He inches the spray can into his hand, thumb on the safety. The bear has moved back to the door side now, pawing at the zipper area. The tent fabric is pressed tight over its face. He can see the vague outline of teeth as it mouths the material. He takes a deep breath and yells at the top of his lungs, "Hey, bear!" No, get back. At the same time, he rips the zipper down on the opposite side, the side away from the bear, and kicks the tent wall open. Cold night air and starlight flood in. His girlfriend bolts, scrambling out of her bag, out of the flap, and sprinting toward the nearest group of boulders. The bear, shocked by the sudden noise and movement, hesitates for a split second. He seizes that moment. He pushes up on his knees, aims in the direction of the dark bulk he can see through the collapsing mesh, and sprays. The cloud of capsaicin blasts out in a roaring hiss. It hits the bear in the face at very close range. There is an instant reaction. The bear bellows, that deep sound that seems to come from its toes, and rears back, claws tearing down what is left of the tent wall. Nylon rips like paper. Poles fly. He keeps spraying, even as the mist blows back into his own eyes and throat. His vision goes white hot, his lungs seize, he coughs and chokes. He can hear the bear thrashing, snorting, pawing at its eyes. It stumbles away, crashing into the brush at the edge of the meadow. The sounds of destruction move away from him into the trees. After a moment, there is only the stream again and his own miserable coughing. He crawls out of the shredded tent, eyes streaming, nose running. His girlfriend is crouched behind a big rock formation, clutching her own spray, shaking. He stumbles to her, half blinded, and they sit there in the dark, backs against the cold stone, listening for any sign of the bear coming back. They wait until first light before moving. In the gray dawn, they can see the tent is destroyed. The stakes are pulled, fabric ripped into ribbons, poles cracked. The bear hung around long enough to stomp the campsite like a tantrum, but it did not get inside while they were trapped in their bags. The food hang is untouched. Their cooking area is clean. They did everything right, and still the bear came. In the studio, he said the lesson for him was not that camping in grizzly country is impossible. It was that you can play by the rules and still have the wild roll snake eyes for you. The spray did its job. Their training did its job, but there was no magical force field. There was just two scared humans and a chemical irritant in the face of a big hungry omnivore. He kept the ripped tent for a long time, holes shaped like claws, teeth marks in the fabric. A reminder hanging in his garage that those pictures on social media with pretty mountains and tiny colored shelters always have a different version too. The one where the mountain sends something down to test the walls. If you are closing your eyes right now, imagine lying in a small nylon room and feeling a paw bigger than your face push the wall down over your nose. That is as far from glamping as it gets. Now let's talk about story number 11, and this one came from a guy who does something you do not really think of as a dangerous job until you hear his bear story. He is a geologist, one of those field guys that goes way out into the backcountry to look at rocks and dirt and drill cores, and then comes back and tells companies and governments what the ground is hiding. He spends months in northern British Columbia and the Yukon, camping beside helicopters and little temporary airstrips, walking drainages that probably have not seen a human in years. When he sat down with me, he told me that he always thought the biggest risks were aircraft, bad weather, and cliffs. Then one summer, a grizzly bear added itself to that list in a way he cannot ever forget. He is out with a very small crew, just him and one assistant, working along the edge of a massive valley. Picture big spruce hillsides dropping down into a braided river, with glaciers hanging way up high and clouds snagging on the peaks. They have a makeshift camp tucked into a little patch of trees. Their job that day is to walk a long ridge, marking rock outcrops on a handheld device and taking samples. The helicopter drops them off on the ridge in the morning and will pick them up near the other end in the evening. No trails, no other people. Just a long walk on a wild spine. They each have a pack, a radio, a can of bear spray on the chest strap, and a rifle as a last resort. The air is crisp, the wind is steady. They start making their way along the ridgeline, stopping to hammer chunks off the exposed rock, writing notes in little notebooks with dirty fingers. They see sheep tracks, old wolf scat, and now and then a huge brown track in the dust where a bear cut across the ridge at some point. Around midday, they drop down off the top a bit to follow a bench that runs along the side of the ridge. On one side, the slope goes steeply up into rock and low alpine shrubs. On the other, it falls away fast into a tangle of stunted trees and boulders. The bench itself is like a narrow hallway of grass and dirt, maybe 4 or 5 meters wide. It is a great natural travel route. They know that. They are using it because it is easier than side hilling through the broken rocks above. They are talking quietly, heads down, looking for the next outcrop they have marked on the map. The wind is in their faces, blowing from ahead toward them. That is good for smelling things, bad if something else is coming the other way using the same path. He feels it before he really hears it, a vibration through the dirt like distant thunder. Then he hears the sound of loose rocks popping and rolling. He looks up, and 40 or 50 meters ahead on the bench, a grizzly bear swings around a bend. It is big. One of those truly large northern bears, shoulders like a bull, fur bleached a bit on the back from the sun, head massive. It is walking toward them at a relaxed pace, not knowing they are there yet because the wind is wrong for it too. They stand still for a second, hoping it will angle off uphill or down into the trees. Instead, it lifts its head, catches their scent, and locks onto them. He said there is a huge difference between seeing a bear at a kilometer away through binoculars and seeing one at that distance on a narrow bench with nowhere to go. The bear stops, feet planted, staring. The bench is a straight shot between them. Above them is steep rock and shrubs too dense to run through fast. Below them is a brutally steep slope with cliffs hidden in the trees. The path is the only real place to move, and they are facing each other on it. He starts talking loud and clear. "Hey bear! Hey bear! We see you. We are leaving." His assistant does the same. They raise their arms, try to look big. The bear takes a few steps toward them, slow but deliberate. Its head is low, ears slightly to the side. It is not bluff charging, but it is not leaving either. It is closing the gap. They start backing up, step by step, facing it, trying not to trip on rocks or roots. The bench curves behind them. They know that if they go too far, they will lose sight line, and the bear could be on them faster than they can react. He tells his assistant, "Get your spray ready. I will get the rifle." The assistant pulls his can out, thumb hovering over the trigger. The geologist slowly swings the rifle off his shoulder, keeping the muzzle pointed to the side until it is safely clear, then lowers it toward the trail. The bear keeps coming. 30 meters, 20 meters. Now they can see the wetness around its nose, its muscles moving under the fur, the way its paws spread when they hit the ground. It woofs once, that deep little punch of sound. Then it shifts into a faster walk. There is a moment where everyone on that bench, human and bear, knows that the next choice is going to decide how this ends. He does not want to shoot it. He knows how hard it is to get a helicopter and people in to deal with a dead or wounded bear. He knows that killing a grizzly in that country is a last resort. So he holds fire and lets the assistant try the spray first. At about 10 meters, the bear breaks into a bound. The distance between them collapses. The assistant yells and squeezes the trigger. A bright stream of orange mist blasts out and hangs in the air like a sheet. The wind, for once, is their friend. It blows the clouds straight into the bear's face. The animal hits that invisible wall at a run. It inhales a full breath of capsaicin. Its eyes slam shut. It stumbles, paws at its muzzle, skids on the dirt. The momentum carries it a few more meters, close enough that he could see individual pads on its feet, and then it veers sideways, crashing into the shrubs uphill. It is not done being angry. It rips through the small trees, snorting and coughing, making this awful coughing roar. The brush shakes and rattles. It circles above them, then they hear it break through some rocks and drop down into the trees below. The sounds bounce around the valley, then fade. They stand there on the bench, hands shaking, hearts racing. The assistant still has his thumb locked on the empty spray trigger, knuckles white. The geologist is holding the rifle with the safety off and his fingers straight, ready to fire if a brown blur suddenly appears again. Nothing does. They talk in those short-clipped sentences people use when the adrenaline is still flooding their veins. "You good. You hit it. I saw it. That was close." Then the radio crackles on his belt and the pilot's voice comes through asking for a status update. He just says, "We had a bear encounter. We are okay. We are coming to the pickup now." They do not stay another second on that bench. They back out to a more open shoulder and head straight for the pickup point, calling out loud every few steps, eyes scanning the slopes above and below. Later, when the helicopter lifts them out and they fly over that same ridge, they can see the path of broken shrubs where the bear went busting through, and it sends a fresh chill through both of them. In the studio, he said the lesson was simple. In that kind of country, any nice, natural walking route you enjoy, animals like more. You think you are using a handy game trail. A grizzly thinks the same thing. That day, their paths overlapped in exactly the wrong place. If his assistant had fumbled the spray, or the wind had twitched the wrong way, the conversation would have been very different. If you are listening under a blanket, picture a dirt hallway hanging in the sky, steep slopes above and below, and then imagine a massive brown shade walking into the far end of that hallway, looking at you and deciding if you are going to share or leave. Now let's talk about story number 12, and this one is straight out of a bow hunter's nightmare. It is the type of story that makes a lot of people rethink cow calling in thick timber without having their head on a swivel. The guest was a lifetime elk hunter from Montana, calm, soft-spoken, the kind of man who has called in more bulls than most people will ever see. He thought he knew every sound in the woods. Then a grizzly bear answered one of his cow calls and almost ended his season and his life in the same minute. He is up a steep drainage in September, alone, doing that classic run and gun elk thing. The forest is thick. Tall fir trees create a green roof, and the understory is loaded with huckleberry bushes and deadfall. The ground is damp, smelling like moss and old needles. The morning is cool, a bit of fog hanging low in the bottoms. He hikes high in the dark and then drops down into an area he knows elk-like, a side basin full of little benches and wallows. He hears nothing at first. No bugles, no cow chirps, so he decides to start a calling sequence to see who is home. He tucks himself against a big tree with good shooting lanes in a couple of directions and starts making soft cow calls on a mouth reed. The sound is that sweet, plaintive mew that drives bulls crazy. He calls for a bit, then listens. The woods are quiet. He adds a few more calls, mixing in some soft calf sounds, trying to sound like a small group of elk moving through and talking to each other. Then he hears it. Not a bugle, not hoof steps, something else. Brush crashes in the bottom of the basin, heavy, quick. He thinks, that was fast. That bull must have been close and silent. He gets his bow ready, arrow nocked, eyes locked in the direction of the noise. The crashing gets louder. Whatever it is coming straight in without hesitation. He catches a glimpse of brown fur through the brush, and his brain screams, elk, for one more second out of habit. Then the shape hits a little opening and everything shifts. It is not a bull. It is a grizzly coming in on a string. He can see its nose up, sucking in air, ears slightly forward. It has that intent predator flow. To the bear, those cow and calf sounds are food noises. Maybe elk calves, maybe something wounded. It has heard this before. It has come to investigate. The distance between them is closing fast. 30 meters, 20 meters. It is weaving between trees, using the trail of sound. There is a small patch of brush between him and the bear. He realizes he is in a horrible setup for this. There is no climbable tree within easy distance. The deadfall behind him is a tangle that would trip him if he tried to run. His only real tools are the spray and his own voice. He lets the bow drop on its sling and goes for the spray on his belt. His heart is beating so loud he can hear it in his ears. He starts yelling in a deep voice, "Hey bear! Hey bear! Get out of here!" The bear hesitates, slows a little, then angles to the side to get a better line of approach. Now it can see him clearly, a human shape against the tree trunk. Its whole posture changes in a flash. It goes from curious predator mode to defensive and confused. It has been tricked. It is already fully committed to coming in, and now suddenly the thing is not what it expected. Sometimes that turns into a retreat. Sometimes it turns into a charge. This time it charges. The grizzly wolf lowers its head and bursts toward him. The force of that change in speed is like somebody hit fast forward on its body. Dirt and leaves fly behind it. It is a direct line now, 4 or 5 bounds, and it will be in his lap. He plants his feet and sprays. The can roars in his hand, a thick orange stream blasting toward the bear. The mist catches the morning light as it hangs in the air between them for a heartbeat. The timing is everything. The bear runs through the cloud at full speed. He said he had always heard that you were supposed to aim low, so the bear runs its nose through the spray. That day he saw why. The bear's head goes into the orange curtain and comes out the other side covered. It inhales that burning stuff straight into its lungs as it is about to roar again. The reaction is immediate and violent. It slams on the brakes. Its front claws gouge the dirt. It skids, swiping at the air. Its roar cuts off in a choking cough. It whips its head side to side, throwing spit and snot. Its eyes clamp shut. It pivots like it got hit by a truck and bolts sideways, crashing into the underbrush, still coughing and moaning. He keeps spraying as it goes, backing up, voice cracking now as he yells. His own throat starts to burn. He coughs, tears running down his cheeks. The forest fills with the smell of hot peppers and bear musk and busted ground. After a few seconds, the crashing fades. Then the basin is quiet again. He stands there with his bow hanging from its sling, the spray can empty, hands shaking. There is a little trench in the dirt where the bear's claws dug in. The footprints are deep. The distance where it stopped is not far at all. If the spray had come out a second later, he would have felt those claws in his ribs. In the studio, he told me he still calls elk, still hunts the same country, but he will never again just sit in thick timber and sound like a lost calf without keeping his head rotating like a radar. He jokes that every cow call now comes with a mental caption that says, "Also calling in something that is not an elk." Underneath the joke is that memory of a brown shape coming at him so fast his brain could not keep up. If you are drifting off, imagine sitting against a tree, making soft little sounds to fool a big deer with antlers, and instead seeing a predator's face appear in the brush, eyes locked on you, thinking you are the injured baby it heard. Now let's talk about story number 13, and this one is a horse story. Grizzly bears and horses together can create some wild chaos. This guest was a horse packer, one of those real-deal mountain cowboys who takes hunters and researchers and gear into rough country with long strings of mules and tough mountain horses. He thought he had seen it all until one fall morning when a big bear decided to test his whole operation at once. They are in western Wyoming in October, working with a group of biologists who need equipment and samples hauled in and out of a remote basin. The camp is a classic wall tent setup in a meadow with a creek. The horses and mules are high-lined at night between trees, and during the day they carry ridiculous loads up and down steep switchbacks with calm, resigned expressions. One morning, the packer and one younger helper are taking a string of 6 animals up a narrow trail that winds along the side of a ridge. The drop on the downhill side is not sheer, but it is steep enough that if a horse goes off, everybody has a very bad day. The uphill side is a wall of brush and rock. The path is just wide enough for one animal at a time. It is that classic mountain hallway again, but now full of hooves. He rides at the front on his lead horse with 3 pack mules behind him, and then the helper riding drag at the end with 2 more. The packs are full of gear and some sealed containers of samples that have their own interesting smells. Bells tinkle softly on a couple of the mules, part tradition, part bear warning system. They are halfway up the ridge when the lead horse suddenly throws its head up, ears locked on something ahead. The bells fall silent as the mules stop, sensing his tension. It is not huge, not a monster, but it is big enough, and more importantly, it is in exactly the wrong place. The trail is the only good route, and the pack string is already committed to it. The bear looks at the line of animals and people, huffs, and starts walking toward them. The lead horse snorts and starts backing up. The mules behind bump into each other, packs swaying, hooves scraping. In a second, it could turn into a pile of tangled legs and ropes. The helper at the back is trying to keep his animals from plowing into the ones in front of them as everyone moves backwards with different ideas about speed. The packer knows he cannot let the string panic on that narrow stretch. If they start turning and bolting, someone is going to end up under hooves or down the slope. He also knows he does not have time to turn the whole line around. He needs the bear to decide to go somewhere else. He swings his leg off the horse and hits the ground, grabbing the lead rope close to the bit. He steps a little in front of his horse, making himself more visible. He feels the horse vibrating at the end of the rope, muscles ready to spin and run. He starts yelling, "Hey, bear! Hey, bear, get out of here." He waves his free arm, trying to look as big and annoying as possible. The bear keeps coming. It woofs again, that heavy chest sound. The trail is its highway, and it does not feel like yielding it to a bunch of sweaty domesticated animals and 2 yelling primates. It is not charging full tilt, but it is not stopping either. 20 meters now. The packer drops the lead rope, trusting his experienced horse to hold, and grabs the can of bear spray off his belt. He steps out a little further into the trail, heart pounding, and aims. His whole body knows that if this goes wrong and the horse spooks at the spray or at the bear, he will have chaos behind him and a predator in front of him. The bear takes a few more determined steps, then he lays down a long orange cloud across the narrow path, angled so the wind will carry it right into the bear's face. The bear walks into it and gets a full dose. Instantly it stops, throws its head back, and starts coughing. It shakes its head so hard its whole body shimmies. It paws at its muzzle, sneezing and moaning. It turns sideways, bumps into the brush, breaks a dead log in half. The horses are snorting and prancing now, eyes rolling, trying to spin. The helper is doing everything he can to keep the back of the string from bolting. The packer keeps yelling and waving his arm, but now he is yelling for the animals as much as at the bear. Easy, easy, easy. His heart is all over the place, but his voice has to stay calm for the horses, because they read that as much as anything. The bear finally decides that a nose full of fire and a wall of hooves and shouting is not worth it. It lurches upslope through brush that looks like it should stop a car. It crashes up into the trees, leaving a trail of shaking branches. In a few seconds, it is gone, still coughing. They just stand there for a minute, the whole crew, animals and humans, breathing hard. The lead horse is dancing in place but has not bolted. The mules are levering their ears forward and back, trying to decide if it is safe. The helper yells a shaky sentence that is mostly swear words and the word bear. They back the string carefully down to a slightly wider turnout, tie off, and give everything a chance to calm. The packer's own hands are shaking so much that he has trouble getting a drink of water without spilling it. He looks at the empty spray can and realizes he is going to be walking very differently the rest of that day. In the studio, he said he has a lot of respect for those horses after that. They were bred, literally, for that job. But even a horse that has seen wolves and storms and loud creaks is not really prepared for a grizzly deciding to walk straight down a one-lane path toward its nose. The fact that they did not explode off the trail and take the whole crew with them is a miracle and a credit to their training. If you are dozing off listening, picture a narrow path carved into the side of a steep hill, every meter of it full of nervous horseflesh and jangling packs, and then imagine a brown bear stepping into the far end of that line, looking at the whole convoy and deciding if it should force its way through. Now let's talk about story number 14. And this one comes from a wildlife photographer who got a little too romantic about sleeping under the stars in real grizzly country. He normally does everything by the book, but one perfect night lowered his guard, and a bear almost lowered his lifespan. He is in Montana, high in the mountains, on a late summer trip to photograph alpine lakes and stars over peaks. He hikes in a few kilometers with a big pack full of camera gear and a very small amount of camping gear. His plan is to cowboy camp, which basically means no tent, just a sleeping pad and a bag on the ground, so he can pop up at night, shoot the Milky Way, and then crawl right back into his bag without dealing with zippers and fabric. He spends the evening wandering around a stunning little lake nestled in a cirque, framed by cliffs. He takes sunset shots, reflections of purple clouds on still water, all the stuff that makes calendars. He has a small stove. He cooks his dinner well away from where he plans to sleep. He scrubs his pot as best he can, walks his food and trash away, hangs them properly, and comes back to his chosen flat patch of grass near some rocks. The night is unbelievably clear. No wind, no clouds, just an ocean of stars overhead. He lays his pad and bag down, pulls on a hat, and slides into his little cocoon. He keeps his camera on a tripod right next to him, angled up at the sky, and his bear spray is in the side pocket of his backpack within arm's reach of his right hand. He falls asleep to the sound of tiny waves lapping against rocks and the occasional pika squeaking somewhere in the talus. It is one of those nights where you feel like the planet is tucking you in. At some point in the dark, he dreams that something is walking around his bed. That is what his sleeping brain tells him. Heavy footfalls, slow and deliberate. Then it stops being a dream. He wakes up, his eyes open to blackness with a dusting of stars. He has that half second of confusion where you do not know where you are. Then he hears breathing, close, deep, slow, not human, not deer. He stays very still. His hand inches toward the backpack pocket where the spray is. The sound of footsteps shifts. Something large is moving just beyond the edge of his vision, around his sleeping bag. He can faintly see a darker shape blotting out some stars. Then something grabs his sleeping bag near his feet and tugs. The sensation is surreal. One moment he is just lying there. The next, the whole bag moves half a meter down the grass, like someone pulled a rug under him. His feet slide. His heart lurches. He yells without planning it. A raw, instinctive shout. The shape at the end of the bag growls, a low, guttural sound that turns his blood to ice. He feels another tug, harder this time, and the bag shifts again. The bear is testing this weird soft cylinder lying on its lakeshore. Maybe it smells like human. Maybe it smells like the little bit of residual food scent that you can never fully wash off your clothes. Either way, it is investigating the only thing in the meadow that does not belong there. He jams his hand into the backpack pocket, fingers scrambling until they close around the cold metal of the spray can. He yanks it out, twists his upper body while still mostly cocooned, and points toward the motion at the foot of the bag. He cannot see details, just a general darker mass against the stars. He sprays. The hiss is loud in the still night. The orange mist arcs out and catches a bit of starlight. Then it hits something solid, because suddenly there is a violent reaction. The bear roars, this time full volume. It lets go of the bag, paws pounding the ground. He feels the vibrations up through his body. The animal backs away, coughing and snorting. He keeps spraying, sweeping the can back and forth in the direction of the noise. He is half out of the bag now, kicking free, eyes watering from the backdraft of the mist. The world turns into a blur of dark shapes, burning air and sound. He hears heavy footfalls as the bear runs off. Branches snap, rocks clatter, the sounds move away into the darkness. After a few seconds, there is only his own ragged breathing and the tiny lap of water on the shore again. The stars look exactly the same. His whole reality feels different. He slides fully out of the bag, heart still racing, and stands there in his socks, scanning the darkness. His eyes are stinging. He flushes them with a bit of water from his bottle, then immediately starts packing up. There is no waiting until morning. He stuffs the bag, pad, and camera gear into his pack with shaking hands and starts hiking out by headlamp, every little shadow making his shoulders twitch. In the studio, he told me that night cured him of one thing. No more cowboy camping in serious grizzly country. Tents are not magic. Fabric does not stop claws. But having walls and a door at least gives you a bit of time to hear something coming, and it changes the way bears respond sometimes. Lying in the open like a big burrito on the ground felt very different the moment a bear decided to use him like a tug toy. He said the strangest sensory memory is the feeling of the whole sleeping bag sliding on the ground, his feet being pulled, his body going with it, while overhead the same stars he had been peacefully photographing a few hours before just watched. If you are lying under a ceiling right now, think about swapping that for open sky, no walls, just some nylon around your body, and then feeling an invisible force drag you across the ground in the dark. Now let's talk about story number 15, the last one, and this one is not about a single charge or one dramatic impact. It is about a lifetime of almost, told by a man who has spent more time around grizzly bears than nearly anyone I have ever spoken to. He is a retired park warden, decades of work in places like Banff and Jasper, Yellowstone and Glacier, moving between systems, always around big country and big bears. He came in here with a calm that only comes from hundreds of incidents handled and a few that almost went completely sideways. Instead of one story, he picked one season where everything that could go wrong with bears and people seemed to show up in different forms, and in each one he was about 2 seconds and one bad decision away from being mauled. He told me about a camping area that year that had started to become a bear magnet. People left coolers out, they left garbage in fire pits, they dropped fish guts near shore. Despite all the signs and talks and warnings, human food was drifting into the bear diet. A particular sow with 2 cubs had figured out that tents and picnic tables sometimes meant calories, and she was starting to push that line. One evening, he gets a radio call that there is a bear in a lakeside campground, moving between sites, getting way too close to people. He and another warden drive in, lights off, trying not to create more chaos than necessary. When they arrive, the scene looks almost normal. People are sitting by fires, kids are playing near the water, but in between the camp loops a big bear shape is moving. He gets out, shotgun loaded with rubber slugs and noise rounds, spray on his hip, sidearm holstered. He starts calling out to campers to get inside vehicles or trailers, to move away from open coolers, to go indoors if they can. Most people listen. A few stand and stare, annoyed, drinks in hand. The sow is near a cluster of sites, sniffing a grill that is still warm. The cubs are on the edge of the trees, watching. He and the other warden fan out, trying to push her gently toward the woods without cornering her. They clap, shout, make human noises. She lifts her head, annoyed but not scared. She has had a few positive experiences around camps, and that makes her bold. He fires a rubber slug into the dirt near her hindquarters. It pops loud, kicks up dust, and stings when fragments hit her. She barks and hops forward, surprised, then whirls around. For a second, he thinks she will bolt into the trees. Instead, she locks onto him. She has just been hurt by something loud, and now the loud thing is attached to this upright figure with a bright vest. She comes, not at a full run at first, but with that rolling, forceful walk that says, "I am going to fix this problem." He raises the shotgun, but there is a family in a tent trailer directly behind the bear from his angle. In that half second of calculation, he realizes that even a rubber round can do serious damage if it passes through or ricochets. The other warden is too far to get a clean shot yet. The sow is closing the gap, cubs forgotten for the moment. He drops the shotgun, grabs his spray, and moves sideways to change the backdrop. The bear accelerates, closing fast. He can see her teeth, the saliva, the tension in her shoulders. Someone in a trailer screams, car doors slam, the world narrows to a line between him and the sow. He shouts in his deepest, loudest voice, "Hey bear, back!" He sprays in a heavy arc. The cloud hits her at about 6 or 7 meters, just as she is lowering her head for a real rush. She plows into the mist, inhaling through an open mouth, and instantly flips from anger to pain. She rears up, pawing at the air, then drops and wheels, coughing. She bolts between 2 trees and crashes into the undergrowth, cubs scrambling to stay with her. The forest echoes with her moaning coughs. He feels the mist hit his own face, eyes and nose burning, but he stays in place until he is sure she is not spinning back. Only then does he fall back, rubbing at his eyes, adrenaline shaking his limbs. He told me that if he had hesitated another second, or if he had not moved sideways to avoid the family behind her, she might have hit him full-on in front of a dozen terrified campers. The line between a bear hazing incident and park warden killed in front of children was thinner than a sheet of newspaper. Later that same season, he is on a trail closure patrol. A trail has been closed because a carcass is near it and a big male grizzly has been feeding nearby. People still try to go around closures, so he hikes the area to make sure nobody is sneaking in. He is alone, radio on his shoulder, spray in hand, shotgun slung. He comes to a bend in the trail where the closure fence is set up. On the other side, down in a brushy hollow, he knows there is a dead elk, half-eaten. Ravens circle overhead. He can smell that sweet, rotten meat smell even from upwind. He is just starting to call out in case anybody is beyond the fence when he hears something heavy in the brush below. The boar appears almost silently, nose first, then shoulders, then the rest of him. It is the kind of animal that makes you involuntarily swear when you see it. Big head, wide chest, claws like ivory blades. It is only 30 meters off the trail, down in the depression, standing over the carcass. The bear lifts its head, sees him, and in one fluid motion moves up the slope toward the trail. No hesitation. This is its food, its space. It has been harassed by ravens and smaller carnivores for hours or days. Now something upright is shouting on the ridge. It wants that noise gone. He has a fence between them, but the fence is just posts and rope and a plastic sign. It means nothing to the bear. It shortens the distance in 3 big bounds. He backs up slowly, shouting, "Hey bear, get back, get back." He brings the spray up. The shotgun is on his back. There is no time for a careful shoulder mount. The bear hits the closure rope with its chest. The rope snaps free and goes flying. It does not even slow. 15 meters, 10 meters. He can see old scars on its muzzle, frosting on its back fur. He can smell it over the carcass stink. He sprays hard, directly down the line between them. The mist hangs in the still air. The boar hits it, inhales, and does that now familiar choking roar. It veers off, heading parallel to the trail, pacing back and forth below him, snorting, head shaking, before finally dropping back down toward the carcass, blinking and pawing at its face. He backs away until he cannot see it anymore, every step measured, fight or flight instincts wrestling inside his body. Later, looking at his spray can, he sees he used nearly half of it in that one burst. He told me, "People talk about bear spray like it is this easy thing. You just point and puff. In that second, your finger does not know how to be gentle. You are almost always going to overdo it. Better an empty can and a live ranger than a half-used can and a broken rib cage." He had variations of those moments for years. Close, bluff charges that stopped just outside his reach. Bears testing truck doors with their teeth while he sat inside with the radio. Nights where he sat in the dark listening to heavy footsteps just beyond a thin wall, wondering if his electric fence around a campground was enough to convince a hungry animal to go look for berries instead. What he said, and this stuck with me, is that every one of those almost killed times had the same core. Some little piece of complacency or human desire had crept in, a cooler left open, a carcass too near a trail, a campsite in the wrong spot, a closure sign someone ignored. The bear was never evil, it was just being exactly what it was built to be, a big, smart omnivore trying to gain calories with the least effort possible. He retired with all his limbs intact and a ton of scars from other things, but he carries those near misses in his dreams. He said he will sometimes wake up in the middle of the night in a normal house, heart pounding, because his brain just replayed the image of a sow grizzly running at him in a campground with cubs behind her and people screaming inside fabric walls. If you are drifting into sleep right now, think about all 15 of these stories together. Guides in creeks fighting for their arms, biologists spraying sows at 5 meters, bow hunters that sounded like a wounded calf and drew in the wrong predator, runners, bikers, trappers, rafters, horsemen, couples in tents, a guy in a sleeping bag on bare ground. Different people, different jobs. Same animal reminding them that the wild is not a backdrop. It is an active force with teeth. The guests who told me these stories laughed sometimes. They made fun of their own mistakes. They talked about gear and spray brands and bullet weights, but when they hit the moment where they really thought they were going to die, you could hear their voices change. They all remembered the smell, the weight, the sound of claws on dirt, breath from a mouth big enough to take a chunk out of a moose. You get to hear it from a distance, maybe under a blanket, maybe in a car, maybe with your eyes closed. They got to feel it in their bones, and then somehow walk away and sit down in a studio years later. 15 times grizzly bears almost killed them, and all 15 times something small went right. A can worked, a horse held, a rider wore his spray where he could reach it, a warden stepped sideways instead of back. And if you are listening to this to fall asleep, you can take the adrenaline from their almost, let your heart slow down, and be grateful that tonight, at least, the only thing padding around your room is maybe a pet, not a 300 or 400 kilogram question mark with claws.